This movement is giving that message to the British government. Stop now or pay a political price.
So there's an upcoming general election in the UK. So I thought it's a good time to share some of Jeremy Corbyn. I came across a few clips here that I want to share with you. So this first one essentially is 30 years of Jeremy Corbyn. Let me go down here. And it really shows you his commitment to the people.
The Labour Party belongs to its grassroots.
I think there's definitely a plan to try to diminish or exclude the left within the party. That isn't going to work because the left in the party often represent an awful lot of what popular opinion is about. The need to raise taxation for the above average income people in order to pay for the needs of the rest. And I see a moral justification for that. I think it's the right thing to do.
I'm horrified that there should be any idea of cutting disability and sick benefits. They're not sufficient as it is. Many people live in great poverty because of the inadequate levels of benefits.
It was founded as a party dedicated to the provision of universal benefits, universal housing and universal education. I believe the case for public ownership is absolutely overwhelming. I think it's wrong for the party to set as a benchmark competition and market forces as being something to look up to.
No more detentions of any of these asylum seekers. They're not criminals, they're people that are fleeing from crime.
Does she not agree that people sleeping on the streets of our capital city, being charged exorbitant rents, and children being brought up in bed and breakfast hotels is a disgrace?
Mr. Speaker, I announce very considerable extra expenditure to relieve homelessness.
Public representatives demand the highest possible standards of public probity.
£25 billion plus £50 billion running costs is an extraordinary waste of money for a weapon that can only cause death and mayhem if ever used against the civilian population. It is not bring us peace and not bring us security. Ordinary people all over this country can show their disgust at the military policies being pursued by George Bush and very unfortunately supported actively by the British government.
Whilst obviously condemning the bombing campaigns in Britain, it is important to be able to talk to Sinn Féin as a way of demonstrating to Sinn Féin and its supporters that there is some point in dialogue. If you believe something, you should say it. If you don't believe it, you shouldn't say it. I think there are principles involved here. If I stand for election as a Labour candidate, as a socialist, people know what they're voting for.
And understand that this last point here is a big deal. Corbyn defied the Labour whip more than 600 times. That means he didn't vote with his party more than 600 times. Now, in Canada, this is almost, I feel like this is unheard of. Usually parties vote together. They support the same stuff. Jeremy Corbyn stands up for what he believes in. Much like, I get very similar vibes off this clip as I do with old Bernie clips, because it shows you this man has a history of being dedicated to the people, of fighting for what he actually believes in. He doesn't sell out to special interests. So when you have a Labour Party leader like this in Jeremy Corbyn, I mean, the kind of positive change that can happen in the UK, someone who's going to reinvest back into people, reinvest into the NHS, reinvest into homelessness or into housing, and into food security. You have the potential here for a dramatic shift in a similar way that Bernie Sanders could deliver in the US. I hope people are more aware of this now than they were during the last election, even though Labour had a fantastic result in the last election. It clearly wasn't enough to form government. I hope this time they can actually form government. And I just don't. How does anybody vote for the Tories? How does anybody vote for Boris Johnson? This complete buffoon, just the British version of Trump. It doesn't make any sense to me. As long as people come out in big numbers, this is what matters. If non-voters, typical non-voters, come out to vote in these elections, be it in the UK or be it in America, then the progressive candidates will win because the majority of people agree with them on the issues. But you have to you have to go out and vote. And you have to bring a friend with you. Bring someone with you who doesn't normally vote, who isn't into politics, but agrees with you on these issues. Bring them out with you to vote. This is how you change things. You have to engage, especially if you're someone who knows this stuff. If you're somebody watching my channel, this means you're more informed than the average person is. So you have to engage other people in your life, friends, family. Get them, if you're in the UK, get them into this race. If you're in America, get them into the primary. Help them understand what is going on, who is fighting for you. Show them the issue. Show them old clips of Corbyn. Show them old clips of Bernie. You have to engage people who are not normally engaged in politics, get them engaged in the process, and get them out to vote. This is how you change things. But I'm not done. There's more. So actually, Luke Savage, who's a great follow on Twitter. Make sure you follow Luke Savage. He's a writer for Jacobin. He put out this clip as well. So this is Jeremy Corbyn speaking on the Iraq War.
Thank you to every single person that's here today in the biggest ever political demonstration in the history of this country. And today there are 600 and more demonstrations in cities all around the world. Every country, every continent, everybody in the world has a chance today to say no, absolutely no, to war on Iraq. Well, surely the message today in London, in Glasgow, and ordinary people on the streets of this country is this. Why are we spending £3.5 billion on a war that nobody wants, when there is an AIDS pandemic sweeping Africa, when a quarter of the world's children die in poverty and starvation, and we say there isn't money sufficient for our own public services? Thousands more deaths in Iraq will not make things right. It will set off a spiral of conflict, of hate, of misery, of desperation that will fuel the wars, the conflict, the terrorism, the depression and the misery of future generations. Our message today here in London, 1 million and more strong, is this. We want to live in a world free from war. The way to free us from the scourge of war is to free ourselves from the scourge of injustice, of poverty, and the misery that's associated with that. This movement is giving that message to the British government. Stop now or pay a political price. Thank you very much.
Like, when you have somebody with this consistency, being correct on the issues, fighting for people his entire career, how is there even a discussion? Like, it should just be human nature, or it should be obvious to support politicians, support candidates that were right, that were correct on the issues against all the power that was against them. So you think back when the Iraq War was going on, and you have very few politicians speaking out loudly about it, coming out against it. People like Bernie Sanders leading the effort against the Iraq War. Jeremy Corbyn leading the effort against the Iraq War. These are clear leaders. People that were correct on the issues, despite everybody being against them, despite the odds against them, correct on the issues, speaking loudly, getting people out and engaged on these issues. We look back in history and see them now. It's clear these are people that should be leading countries. There is not even a discussion anymore. This all should be obvious. Now, let me get to one more clip here, because it appears it's maybe becoming a little obvious for some people, as Labour is now doing fairly well in fundraising. So let's watch this.
I want to tell you that this afternoon we passed a very important landmark, a milestone. We have raised from public donations for our election campaign to take the fight to every town, every city, every village all over this country, £1 million. And to raise this money, when we agreed to the election last week, Tuesday, I didn't jump in a taxi and go down to the City of London to see some hedge fund managers. I was going to call all my billionaire friends until I realized I didn't have any. And so we sent out an appeal, and our supporters, our members, have been very generous. And you know what the average donation is? £26. And I'm more proud of £26 being donated to our campaign by people who believe in what we believe in than somebody giving money because they've got large amounts of money in order to try and buy influence into our political system.
There you go. How do you argue against that? I mean, there are so many obvious parallels between Corbyn and Sanders. I mean, raising small dollar donations, not meeting with wealthy donors, being correct on the issues for 30, 40 years, fighting publicly against some of the things out there that was happening back then, like the Iraq War. I mean, yeah. Let's just imagine a world, an incredible world in the future where Jeremy Corbyn is the leader of the UK, Bernie Sanders is the president in the US, and we begin to see a dramatic shift in how politics is done worldwide. It requires events like that. It requires a dramatic shift in two major superpowers in the world, the UK and the US. It requires them to change leadership and change how politics is done to affect the rest of the world. We are on the precipice of that. So this is why I talk about, if you understand, if you're engaged on these issues, if you know what is going on generally, again, no one's an expert on anything, but you clearly, if you're watching me, you know more than most people. You have to engage the masses, engage people in your life, tweet about it, post things on Facebook about it, but engage friends and family, get people actively involved in what is going on, and at the very least, get them out to vote. When it's time to vote, bring people with you. This is how you change things.